All right. Welcome back to the podcast. Mark Lindsay out on the West Coast and Eloy Escagedo over here on the East Coast. This is Trampled Underfoot Pod. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. I don't know if that came out over the air or what, but you froze up for just the briefest of seconds there. It said, "This is the Tramp. Welcome to the show."
Is that what I said? Welcome to the Tramp.
Yeah,
Welcome
you
to the
froze.
show.
At least on my end. I don't know if that came out, you know.
Well, you guys be the judge. Did I say just because the internet is so finicky lately in my personal space? It's so finicky. I don't know about it seems like, doesn't it always seem like everybody else is cruising the highway and everything on your end is just falling the heck apart? Doesn't it seem that way?
It does. And now you know why I say I have the kind of luck I have. If it's 40 below zero and I take off my right glove, whatever I'm looking for is going to be in my left pocket. And that's just it. So,
I know.
It's what it's like to be me. So I just kind of roll with it.
It's an incredible thing. And I know that that's not the truth. The truth of the matter is that everybody has obstacles in life, and life is
Sure.
It is difficult in many moments for everybody because we're all human and we share not radically within the context of human experience. We're all human, so we experience the same sort of like sphere of things that could happen and stuff. It's just that for some darn reason, the crappy stuff goes, in one. It appears like it goes in one person's right, but that's not being too thankful.
Well, it just kind of depends, on your outlook in life. I mean, most folks tend to cruise along at a pretty normal rate, and, circumstance, coincidence, things happen, that are not in our control. I mean, you can plan your life away and, you are in no control of when it rains. You're in no control of whether or not you have a flat tire on the way to someplace. I mean, things just happen. But there have been studies, it's all on attitude and it's all on the way you take things. And there have been studies that have proven you take somebody who is cruising along at a medium, just a normal pace, and something incredibly good happens to them to where they're extremely happy, or something incredibly bad happens to them and they're obviously very unhappy. Like you have had people who either through sickness or injury have lost a limb.
Oh, geez.
And obviously they're down in the, they're down in the bottom of the barrel, attitude wise and in their mental state. And you have other people who have, like, say, won the lottery to where they should be out absolutely just over the moon, incredibly happy. And they are for a while, but pretty soon they kind of motor back to where they were and their attitudes kind of balance themselves out. You pull yourself up out of that low point when you figure out what you can do with your new circumstance, or you kind of even out from that high point and the new and exciting kind of wears off. So, I don't know. That was related to a study about people who get grumpy as they get older. Is it age that makes you grumpier? And basically the result of this study was that grumpy old man was probably a grumpy young man all along, because folks, it just, age doesn't seem to have any kind of a correlation.
I don't know that study, but I would put forth my limited thoughts on that. Is it reasonable or not to think when you begin life, you're young and there's all sorts of foolishness and stuff, and you meet the day with, if you're happy, and this and that, and you could have these moments. But as you get older, you've gathered all of this luggage, and depending on the amount of circumstances you've been involved in, let's say your 20th marriage, or whatever, the third time you were lost in a wild jungle with deadly tribesmen throwing lances at you, whatever the case, there's people that at a certain point, or the person that gets, vandals,
Sure.
crash their. So after a certain point, I think that it's reasonable for a certain part of the public at large at that age to say, you know what, I'm not having it.
Yeah, cynicism can infect anybody at any time. What the study found was it's not so much related to age as it is related to experience. Because you can have cynical people in their teens, and you can have hopelessly optimistic people in their 70s. It was more to do with
Experience.
your attitude and how you deal with it, because that guy where it doesn't matter what it is. If there's the slightest little issue, the world is falling apart and it's all over. And you also know people who, if the slightest little thing goes wrong, it's okay, guys, we're going to make it. If we all pull together, you just want to reach over and slap, the always optimistic, happy and peppy and bursting with love kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be like that. That's just their personality. It doesn't really have much to do with aging. Yeah, we do get more cynical as we get old because we've seen a lot more. And where things that may have made us just drop our jaws with shock 20 years ago are just commonplace now. And it's just like, yeah, okay, next.
So I guess we could agree that it's based on, because you can have a happy, so I'll say this. Can we agree that it's in part based on one's accumulated experiences?
But also
in part,
but also your attitude. If you're basically a happy person, you're generally going to stay pretty much a happy person. If you're by nature just a grumpy person, you're probably going to stay a grumpy person.
Can I flip this on its head though?
Sure.
So let's say a happy person, grumpy person, like you're saying,
mm-hmm.
which I don't disagree. So your point of view in the world, you're going to, if you're a go-getter and you're ready to go out the door and say, hey, bring it on, mm-hmm. I'm enjoying this, it leads to a sort of cascade of more of that.
Yeah.
And less of the other stuff. But if you have a person that's been like one of the survivors from Friday the 13th movies, let's say, I know this is funny, but they've been through this massacre at a camp.
Mm-hmm.
This person is traumatized. You can't, and let's say before that, they were the most cheerful, gleeful individual surfer kid from LA that went over to Lake Death over one weekend, and then all of a sudden they have this shocking experience and stuff. You can also have people that have this happy-go-lucky positive thing, but once they get the massacre going,
well, but you're talking about an extraordinary circumstance, though. That's why I say generally speaking. I mean, there are people in their 70s starting new businesses today. They've retired from 3 other careers and starting something new today. They are that go-getter, that optimistic one. They don't want to sit around. They want to keep going, But there are also people in their 20s who have decided that they're just, never going to succeed in life. And so why bother?
Right.
So, but if you take an extraordinary circumstance like a plane crash or something like that, you're going to have exceptions to the rule. But that's why I say on average, overall, in general, and that's not to say that you can't change your attitude. Growing up, my grandfather on my father's side was always very quiet, very private, didn't say a whole heck of a lot. I mean, the first time I can remember the man speaking to me, directly to me, I was about 5 years old. And he didn't say much at all. I was out hitting a rock with a hammer, and he looked down at me. He was on his way in from the garage. He looked down at me, and I stopped what I was doing, and I just looked up. He said, "You're going to hit that piece of it's going to fly up and hit you in the eye." And he walked into the house. And it scared me. I jumped up and ran into the garage. He scared me. He was just that kind of an imposing figure. Years later, he developed cataracts. And this was long before cataract surgery. He developed cataracts so bad he lost his vision. After that, you couldn't shut him up. He became the friendliest, happiest guy I've ever met in my life. And it was simply because he figured out what he'd lost when he lost his vision. Mm-hmm. Took a reassessment of his life and just decided, why am I being such a, jerk to everybody, everything and everybody? And he really, he just opened up. He was a different guy, different person entirely. And so you can have an attitude change. You can shift your opinions. You can change your mood. It's all in the way you react to stuff, But overall, in general, that study showed that if you are a basically happy person, you're probably going to stay that way. And if you're a basically sullen person, you're going to stay that way. Yeah.
We are to a degree wired on the genetic level. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a genetic scientist and this and that. No, because there's actual, we're living in extraordinary times because, they can map your freaking, DNA. And people pay for that all, not just the amount that they do for, like ancestry
genealogy,
stuff. They could do. And there's studies on, are you more prone to smoking? Are you less prone? And they do these surveys with people, and if they have these combination of genes, they'll do either a small, large, or extremely large survey, and then they'll pinpoint genes that. So I can see that people are hot wired in a certain way, but it doesn't mean, and they always say this, that just because you have those combination of genes, it doesn't mean that the end result is that you're an extreme smoker or this or that.
Yeah,
there are genes though, or there are studies that you can't refute certain things, that are just like, this is it. But when it comes to behavioral stuff, you could have the attributes for, it could even be a psycho killer, and chances are you could go either way.
Sure.
And that kind of stuff. So it's like
a predisposition to something is not a guarantee. So
yeah.
But I can see that. It's kind of like, my family, blonde hair runs in my family, blue and gray eyes run in my family. A redhead would be an anomaly. It's not to say that it's not possible, just that it would be an anomaly.
Yeah.
So, but what can you say?
I will say that I, as far as behavior and this and that, I don't know the difference between, I know the difference, but I don't know that I should care as much as I do the difference between someone that's a nasty person in my esteem or a great person in my esteem, or whatever behavior throughout the spectrum in my esteem. All that I really, and this is just an observation, that's why all that I really care about is my behavior out towards the world,
right?
And my perceptions out towards the world, not in a selfish way, but I mean it in a way that it's the only thing that I can control or that I can observe with the ability to make judgment calls about myself.
And there's a lot of truth and a lot of wisdom in that, you're kind of lucky in that you understand and realize the things you can control and the things you can't. It's real easy to get cheesed off because you got caught out in the rain and scream at the world, scream at the universe, scream at whoever you want to scream at, but it doesn't change a thing. You're not in control of that. And it's surprising how little we are really in control of. And it's even more surprising how little of it is any of my business. You're talking about being civil to people and being decent to folks because that's the way you want to be. And that's the way you want to be treated. Yeah, well, that's understandable. As for people who are the kind that you're talking about, just out of hand, I just have no time for those people. So I don't give them any attention. I don't give them the attention. But as far as their opinion of me, it's none of my business. I really don't care. I just
Right.
don't care.
And even if one, you know, if there was anything possible for one to, you can't really do anything. All you can do is display what you want to be reciprocal, or you can only project out into the universe, and you can receive as well, but you can choose what to receive and what, but you have no authority over other people.
Right. And you can choose what you receive to a point, because you can't control what somebody else projects to you.
Yeah.
But you can choose to ignore it. You can choose to walk away. You can choose to confront, or, do whatever. Ultimately, what they say, think, or do is not within your control. The only thing you can control is your reaction to it. And it took me 50 years to figure that out, believe it or not, and I'm kind of an example of people who can change, because I am not the guy I was 10, 15 years ago. I was a completely different hind part, believe me, but I just decided that I didn't want to be that person anymore. Nobody could stand to be around me. And I didn't like it.
It's a tough, so, we grow. I think wisdom has a lot to do, because you figure what's worth it, what's not worth it, and it's a constant, thing.
Sure.
At some point. But there's also the thing about, oh, someone set in their ways, in error. When something is so self-evident, or evident, or whatever, something is just like, hey man, there's something called the telephone now. No, I'm not going to hear about that. No, as a dumb example, there are people set in their ways.
Sure.
And they believe what they believe because they've grown into that, and that's what they were. And hence, there's no fixing that either. And they're quite confident. You can be confident and completely wrong.
Sure. But it's not my job to try to fix that.
Well, yeah.
You want to believe there's no such thing as a telephone? Be my guest. It doesn't involve me. You're the one that's going to have to get in the car and come over to talk to me. And I may or may not be here. So, it's your choice. I have no control over that, and it's none of my business. So I'll leave it at that.
I mean, the telephone was a bad example, but so
I think it's just as good as any other example. I mean, because, I'm not out to change anybody's mind on anything. If anything, I'm out to live a life, be with my wife, be with my family, and just kind of motor through the rest of my life. My fighting days are over.
Well, I'm see, my thing is, and I'm sure that we share this thing, because there's also this, but I'm kind of focused on this. My thing is learning or discovering, but with the caveat of what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm with you.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's a lot to learn in life, but I only want to really learn right now what I really want to what I really want to learn right now. I don't want to learn something that I'll indulge it maybe if it's a shared, thing between people and stuff, But I want to indulge in the things that I wish to, selfishly learn about and figure out and this and that. I just it is
you and me both. And that's why YouTube is so dangerous to me, because I just finished watching a series, and the guy's not done. He won't be done probably for many, many years to come. But this guy, I think I've told you about him. Yeah, in fact, I have linked you to his channel before. And he bought a house. I thought it was in Spain. Turns out it's in France. He kind of showed a little bit of around of where he is. It was built in like 1732, and he's restoring this place. Him and his wife lived there. He's British. He bought the place and he's renovating it. And he's, he take the roof off of one section of the house completely, and we're talking the handmade clay tiles, and take off all the old framing, and then shore up the rock walls and repoint and reconcrete and everything, and then build a new roof over it, and then use a combination of new and old 200-year-old tiles.
I saw it.
I have no desire to do any of that stuff, but it's fascinating to watch. And this kid is good. It's him and his father that are doing most of the work. And this kid is good. And I mean, they're working on huge beams, 10-meter long oak beams that are like, 18 inches wide and 2 feet tall, and lifting these things up with come-alongs and chain hoists and everything else. And how they're getting these things into place is just fascinating to me. I have absolutely zero desire to do any of the things that he's doing, but it's fascinating to watch. So YouTube is dangerous for me because I'll get on that kind of a hole and I dive deep.
Yeah, same thing happens to me. I ended up watching a very interesting. I have something for you, by the way, but since we're talking about this, I ended up watching this very interesting thing, and I'll just flat out say it, but with the preamble of saying that it's a touchy subject for many people, because it's these things set in stone. Like, let's say, and I'll go into it, but I'll just make an example. We've talked about it before. We are not sort of against talking about the pyramids,
right?
When we talk about the pyramids and the construction of so it's okay to talk about there's pyramids there.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to talk about everything, but once you start getting nuanced into, oh, wait a second, did they cast it like we had talked about one time?
Uh-huh.
Then people that have been set, in their studies throughout this whole thing, and then you have this other theory that comes along. It's not okay for a lot of people, because the investment time from this segment of archaeologists, let's say, or ancient Egypt, whatever, it threatens their whole, like, their books, their all that. And so we don't know, if you're honest about it, we don't know if they're putting up a wall because it's a bunk idea, or are they putting up a wall because it challenges their profession?
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's the preamble. I'll be quick about it, but basically I saw this science conference thing, and they're talking about Darwin. And Darwin is one of those things that if I were to say Darwin and a religious movement, the way people think of it, because it's no longer, it can be questioned, it is what it is. People are going to come back at you, and strong and fierceful and fierce, because it's already something that's been set, and particularly scholastically and so on. Well, they're saying that these are like tried and tested, like, scientists, and this is not a ridiculous soft thing. And I sat there and watched it, and they're saying, listen, Darwin was brilliant in his questions and the things, but science evolves. There was an explosion of life. I think it was called the Cambrian
Explosion. Yeah.
But below that, there's no signs of those creatures adapting to a next thing. There's just no sign. There's no sign. And they said, well, with time, enough time given of us searching archaeologically, we will find those things.
Right.
And they did a mathematical calculation about the animals that they first find, fish and crustaceans and all these things. And they did that with the time span of the Earth. They did a serious calculation. And there's no possibility. There's a possibility that's so remote for one thing to adapt. with the given time for it to occur at that Cambrian explosion era,
Right.
that it just doesn't reason out, you know, and they get into it. But anyways, the argument was that the most minute thing is a complex, what you call machine. The most tiny little thing is the most complex machine. Encoded in it is the way for it to come together to be that little machine. And it's just an absurdity. And they were talking about people set in their ways saying that, yeah. Well, it's not a given.
Well,
it's not a given.
And that is the key to science, is it always changes. The default position of the scientist has to be, we don't know. The default position can't be, oh yeah, we know, we've established that. No science is actually settled. Think of the number of things just in our lifetime that have turned out to have been wrong. We get back into that decay of facts, because as they discover new things and new technologies and new way of looking at things, they find out that some of the assumptions that they had were just incorrect. I mean, medical students are taught that about 25% of what they are learning currently will be proven to be inaccurate within about 20 years. Because we keep discovering new things. We keep making further connections, and we keep learning. You know, it's sad to say it, but we learn more about the human brain by observing people who have had brain damage, either through a trauma or some event. That's how we learn about the brain, because we don't know. You can't just take a brain out, examine it, put it back in, and the patient be okay. That doesn't happen. They have to observe people who have had some sort of a damage. So, and that's how they learn. And until that is damaged, they can't really study it.
One thing that you just reminded me of what they said, which was within the math in this particular field, because we know that, well, actually we don't know, but we can safely argue for the use of washing our hands prior to surgery in a facility room that's free of, you know, people throwing
in a sterile environment.
Eating like chewing gum and freaking throwing hot dogs in the air and rolling around the floor with mud. So there are things that have come to be, you know, this is the way to do it, as opposed to that, because the consequences of that. So there is a forward march.
Sure, definitely.
But in reference, and they were saying, and it's savage, if one sits there open-minded, and I wasn't particular. So when I see something like that, I personally, I believe in creation. I can't prove it. I can't prove anything, but that's my personal belief. I'm not going to push it on anybody. None of my business, but I'll say it. And not for any other reason other than it's what makes sense to me. But whatever. You know, it's not like, oh, I'm going to believe because just in case, if I don't believe, you know, I'm going to, you know, burn in this inferno. No, I don't do it like that.
Right.
I don't do it like that. My reasoning is, and I know I'm going off the, if I've been created, if we've been created, and there's a creator to the created, who am I to make these judgment calls and intellectual, moral? Well, you see, because this is, you know, so a creator can destroy, can create, can do whatever they want to the things that it creates. Period. In my mind, I mean, that's how I think that's very reasonable. If you create an art project, you can take it outside and stomp it, burn it on, you know, give it someone, whatever. You have dominion over what you make.
Right.
That's how I see it in my limited, you know. Well, they said that in the case of this, these animals, evolution-wise, if you math it out over time, the ability to discover and get closer to it, they mathematically and you can check it. I mean, you can see any number of these shows and gatherings where they do this. The further in time you go forward, the more complex, the more they look into a thing, the more complex this origin of life or start of life or whatever. In other words, it becomes more difficult, not less complicated, the further you examine and the more you know about it.
Right.
And so they mathematically said that we cannot. Mm-hmm. And then they showed us, a lock, a combination lock on a bike that has maybe 3 slots.
Yeah.
They said the sequencing of these proteins that create us, it's all DNA anyhow. Mm-hmm. Well, you have X amount of combinations. Imagine that lock being a string of combinations in order to create something living that's just out the door and beyond. And you have to get the right combinations of all of those in order to unlock a cell.
Mm-hmm.
And they calculated it out and they said, no. Mathematically, no. So you can't create a living being. You can create things because they do in the lab but they're using things that are already
right.
So it was shocking to me.
I love those kind of things for this reason. It keeps the discussion alive and it makes scientists re-examine their own conclusions, which I think is a healthy thing, because the minute you come out as a scientist and you say this is the way it is, you have closed your mind. You have closed your mind to any alternate possibility. And that's what science is the constant pushing of what we know about reality. Let's talk about the creatures in the Cambrian Explosion. They call it the Cambrian Explosion because they haven't found any evidence of anything before that. Mainly because they don't know what they're looking for. Nobody does. We don't know what we're looking for back there. We don't know what was back then. That's why they haven't found it. We just don't know. You can't find something if you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah, but that... So they discuss these things.
Right.
And what they're saying is that, yes, they haven't found it.
Right.
But the argument is that given enough time, mm-hmm. they will find something. But given the time that and where they have, so the argument, they're putting down the argument that calculated out and all that. It's much more complex than mm-hmm. I'm capable of. But that if they find it, they find, but they haven't found, and there's nothing. Right. It's like dead zone, mm-hmm. and all of a sudden, life.
And that's why they call it the explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody can explain it. They don't know. But I like that kind of thing because it makes people double check themselves.
Yeah.
And makes them re-examine their own positions that they've put forth. And I think we need a lot more of that. I think we need a lot more self-examination. Now, I'm in no way, shape, manner, or form a scientist because I don't really have that kind of personality where I could put myself out on the public stage and say, this is the way it is.
Right.
Because X, Y, and Z. I don't have that kind of personality. And they have to know that the minute they come out there and say, this is the way it is because of X, Y, and Z, there's going to be 100 other people out there who want to make their name because they want to be up on stage, who are going to say, BS, I'm calling BS, I'm going to double check you. We need more of that as well.
Yeah.
You know, we need a lot more self-examination because, and it's simply because of the decay of facts. We keep discovering new things every day. We think everything has already been invented and we just have no clue what hasn't been invented.
Well, yeah, we don't know. We don't know. But hey, listen, so as far as, and we've mentioned the idea of me in our example coming to the table and you coming to the table and you have a set of ideas and assumptions and I have a set of ideas and assumptions and we begin to lay them out. Mm-hmm. and they start to fall like what was that game that we used to with the little checker pieces, Connect Four.
Mm-hmm.
We start laying out the chips of what we believe, and some chips might line up where we're in agreement and this and that, but then we'll come to a disagreement on facts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the whole purpose, it's good to be right because it strokes the ego.
Sure.
But the ultimate, I know it in my mind intellectually, that the ultimate goal for two people coming together with a limited set of facts is to reach an ultimate mutual discovery that might not settle well to me, let's say, because all my thoughts, conclusions weren't put into the final verdict. But the idea of people talking amongst each other, not agreeing, and bringing forth concepts and stuff, to me, that the goal of that is to arrive at a closer thing to a closer, drive to the truth.
Well, yeah, because it motivates further exploration. Always. I mean, everybody has an opinion. We know that. We've made up jokes and cliches about opinions, but always be the hardest on your own. That makes you double check yourself. Why am I so set on this opinion? How did I come to this opinion, and why do I have this opinion? Well, because of the evidence as presented. Oh, really? What about their evidence? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm always the hardest on my own opinions. And because nobody wants to look like an idiot, I'm sure. Nobody wants to look like a fool.
Right. But that's actually should be secondary.
Yeah.
And even as brutal as one might think, it should be, because if everybody's a decent human being sitting at the table where they're understanding that everybody has a brain and we're massaging something out, the embarrassment thing, although I know it exists because we're human and we have egos, but the ultimate goal should be the discovery or a better, closer understanding.
But the embarrassment only comes when you keep trying to hold on to this thing. There is no telephone. There is no telephone. There is no telephone. When 16 people are videoing you with telephones, showing you how wrong you are, to constantly stick with, that's when the embarrassment comes in. The bigger person says, you know what? You're absolutely right. I was mistaken for all those years. Show me this telephone thing and let's dig into it. I want to see how it works. To me, that's the bigger person. So is the person who was willing to admit, you know what? I was absolutely wrong, man.
I agree. So I'll say this. You probably know this. I don't know, but so the study that they had done, I don't know if it was in the early 2000s, 90s. I'm not sure when, but it's called the Dunning-Kruger Effect, that study. Okay. It studied, it was sparked because of an extraordinary event that I think you guys will find, if you haven't heard of it, extraordinary. I mean, just jaw-dropping. But they took people and they ran them through tests, and they had them go through the tests, and before they took the test, which was a knowledge-based test, they asked them, how well do you think that you're going to do on this test based on how intelligent of a person that you are and your skills and skill sets and whatnot? And many people answered, oh, I'm pretty darn confident. Oh yeah, I'm very confident, this and that. And some people were like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And so there was the whole across the board, the different types of responses you would get. And, and they took the test. And what they found was, and this was like a big study, and they published it, and it's used I use it all the time when I see some stupid comment that's very blockheaded and closed-minded. I'll put it out there in some fashion in a thread, just to say, look, the most reasonable thing is to be humble. You can fight your fight, but try and think that you might be frickin' wrong, or you're missing some sort, or just, and the reason for that is that to keep yourself, fair to yourself. But anyways, so they came to the conclusion that people that were quite confident in their results, that they were going to frickin' ace that test, did the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that weren't sure of themselves and they weren't quite sure, they didn't want to opine because, there's all these factors.
Mm-hmm.
Those people were the ones with the highest scores.
Yeah.
And what the conclusion was that people, I'll just say it as they've mentioned it. These are not my words, but people that are stupid think they're frickin' brilliant. Yeah. And do not question themselves, hence making them stupid. And people that are brilliant, smart, to whatever degree, constantly question themselves because they know how much they do not know. Mm-hmm. If you consider all the things possible that you do not know, how in the world could you possibly come to the conclusion that you're sure of X, Y? Yeah. You could be sure of certain things, but that's the whole test. Well, the reason this test was sparked is the shocker of all. It was sparked because a guy went and robbed a bank. He went and robbed a bank without a mask, in full view of the cameras. He looked at the cameras, acted out in front of the cameras, walked to the teller, took their money without a mask, and ran out and robbed the bank. And he was later captured very quickly because they saw him on the cameras and this and that. Well, they asked him, "Hey man, why did you rob the bank and this and that and without a mask or anything?" I mean, and he said, "Oh no, because he had read that people writing secret messages use lime or lemon to create invisible ink, and they would pass secret messages with an invisible ink, and then you just have to go through the process to bring it back out." And so he figured in his calculation, in his limited that he took lemons and squirted it and rubbed it all over himself.
Thinking he would be invisible.
And went and robbed the bank.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one.
And it actually happened.
The guy covered himself in lemon juice, thinking okay, now let me get this down. Because people took lemon juice and wrote with the lemon juice, and when it dried, it was invisible. And then there's a way of probably using heat to like iron it or something like that to oxidize that lemon juice and make it come back.
Yeah.
So you could read it. So he made the logical jump, the logical conclusion. Okay, lemon juice makes you invisible.
Right. Shocking.
Hopefully they got him before he was allowed to breed. That's all I can say. Because we don't need to be splashing in that into the gene pool. Okay. As a species, we need to avoid that. That's flipping hilarious, dude. So because of that, they conducted this study of people.
It spurred this study.
Well, okay, now you mentioned cameras in the bank. This had to be fairly recently. Do you remember about when it was? 80s, 90s, something like that?
They had cameras. I don't know. I'm sure that much more can be learned by doing a Google search if you want to delve into it. But that's what spurred it on. And they were just fascinated by this man's. And by the way, I think I'm paraphrasing from memory. I think that the thief, even after he was told that that's not how it worked,
he continued to believe it.
He continued to believe it. He could not believe it. Because the problem is that there's a limitation in certain areas. And then there's the extreme case. And so so it's like, So that's why that study was spurred on, and the study itself was an amazing thing. So we can never, it's hard. We should not assume, you know, we should always keep it teetering on the fence, fairly. For a lot of for a lot of unknowns, we should teeter on the fence and say, okay, I'll take a little bit here and here. Let's see how that works out.
Well,
okay,
and that's why I say you need to be tough on your opinions. I mean, take them out in the backyard, hang them from the clothesline, and smack them around with the tennis racket once or twice, just to kind of, beat them up a little bit. Challenge your own opinions. Be hard on them, because you'll be amazed at how many are just absolute a crock. I mean, just a crock of BS. That blows me away that he actually thought that.
Yeah, dude.
You know what blows me away even more than that is he probably had a job. And you got to wonder the quality of work he was doing. Oh,
somebody was sitting at home during that time eating a pizza that didn't taste quite right.
Yeah. I didn't order for anchovies. I didn't want no anchovies. Now, but see, that's the thing. We automatically assume that it's a low-level job. Just by the simple, how do we know this guy wasn't a surgeon? I mean, just by the simple process of elimination.
No, I would bet money. I would bet money.
So take surgeon out of that. But I mean, maybe he's in a staff position. If you, just by the simple process of elimination, if you start at the world's best at anything, you're going to end up with the world's worst. But they still have a job.
Did you ever watch the movie Catch Me If You Can?
I don't know.
With Leonardo DiCaprio as the guy that the forger of checks back in the 60s and 70s.
This sounds familiar. I may have, and just didn't know what it was called. I may have walked into the middle of it.
So this is a guy. Familiar. This is a guy that was brilliant. It's a true life story adapted for I guess a book, and then like we see in the movies. Now this is a guy that's a thief that was brilliant, because that exists as well. And boy, does it exist. Well, this guy found out that he could, back then, you could print your own checks, make it look as authentic as possible. He even took airline, like the water tags off of like little airplanes, and put the Pan Am seal, and he would just cash checks, and he dressed the part, and he was rolling in money. This guy, the FBI were on him, and the whole thing. Well, at one point he became a surgeon, but he wasn't a surgeon. But in the movie, he's hovering over a patient that has his messed up, whatever. And there's two doctors next to him, which he's over. Although they're the real doctors, but he somehow finagled his way because of his cunning and skill. And it's kind of evil, but whatever. This is an attempt. Well, all his reference points were he could bullcrap his way through anything, it looked like, and he did. He ended up working for the FBI eventually for fraud and whatnot. Well, this guy, he's sitting there and they're hovering and they're figuring out what to do, but he's the head doctor. So they're looking to him to what to do. And he points to the other one and he says, what do you think of this? And he says, well, I think we should this, and that. And he turns around and, like in a movie that he had seen, and they show the movie, he turns to the other one and he says, do you concur, doctor? He says, do you concur? He's using the language that he saw on TV, and the other doctor's like, huh? And he says, do you concur? And he keeps repeating the same thing until finally the other guy says, yes, I concur. And he says, do you concur? Yes, I concur. Okay. You guys take care of it. And he walked away. And it's the bullcrap. So that's an extreme of a thief, but yet intelligent, let's say.
Oh, yeah. It's don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that people, everybody is an idiot. What I'm saying is they all, you've heard of the Peter principle, right?
No.
The Peter principle is you are promoted one step above your level of incompetence. You are competent you are competent at this level. You're competent at that level. And because you're doing a good job, you're doing a great thing, they keep advancing you and you keep moving up until you get to the thing that you're really rotten at.
Yeah, and then hopefully,
then it's too late to go back down. Sometimes you can, but most times that's when you get the axe and you're gone. Well, greed works that way too.
Interesting.
You may get away with it once or twice, and I'm betting you that's how they caught this guy. This person that Leonardo DiCaprio was playing, was greed got the better of him. You got away with it. 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 Then you went for one too many.
It was greed,
and that's what got
they
you.
found him in a French warehouse with huge machinery printing checks, and they come in the movie, and they come in to bust them, and there's check and the wind, and there's checks flying everywhere and stuff, and it busted.
Yeah. So it's that you get to that point where greed gets you. I got away with that. Do it again. I got away with that. And pretty soon you start thinking, I'm too good for them. I'm too intelligent. They will never get me. I think I've seen part of that movie because it sounds very familiar. Very familiar. I don't know, man. I don't know, man.
But if I had to suggest any movie, and I think that Greg Snow Crusher would concur with me, is that Vampire Deluxe Part 9 is the movie for you. Not Part 8. Don't watch Part 8 or Part 15. It's Part 9 that you really want.
That's the entry point. Just jump straight to Part 9. Forget about parts 1 through 8. Just jump into Part 9. Okay.
Yeah, they weren't at the top of their game in the last 35.
So there's no character development or anything. You just got to go straight for Part 9. Okay.
Do you want me to share the? It has to do with weird. It has to do with weird English words that you, Mark, Lindsay, may or may not know, and I'd like to ask them, and then you see if you know them.
I'm ready. I'm the word nerd. I love stuff like this.
Okay. To be fair, and for the audience out there, to be fair, these are weird English words that we all may or may not know. At the very least, we may have heard them before and maybe even used them. I scanned through them, Mark, and there's some that I've used and that I use like I use. Mm-hmm. So we'll test it out, but before you answer it, give us your natural reaction to it, but don't answer what it is until do it how you want. Let's
like, well, you don't want me to answer, why bother? Okay,
no, I want to hear a little bit of.
And to be fair, I may suck at this. Just because I'm a word nerd doesn't mean I know it.
I don't know. I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised. I scanned it, mm-hmm. and there were some that I recognized that I use.
Okay, well, hit me with your best shot.
Okay, so we'll start. First one, I've kind of heard. The word is, and tell us the definition, and if you know or where you've heard it or whatever. Kerfuffle.
Kerfuffle?
Kerfuffle.
Oh yeah. Oh okay. Yeah. I've definitely I've heard that. It was one of my grandmother's Eastern Texas words. It was a big like a dust up or a commotion or something. What's all the kerfuffle in here? That kind of thing.
That's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. This is one of those slang things that kind of followed her around.
Next one is, and by the way, you guys tell us if you know them as well, but don't answer it like outright. Well, actually. Well, okay, you answer what you want out there, but Mark, don't look at the screen.
We've got a 30-second delay, at least a minimum of 30 seconds. So the latency on a YouTube is so. Okay. They didn't even hear the first question yet.
Okay, hullabaloo.
Hullabaloo. It's kind of sort of the same thing, isn't it? Kind of a hullabaloo. It's kind of a loud hullabaloo, kind of a loud, noisy situation.
Okay. It's a word that really sounds like what it means. Hullabaloo. is the loud noises and shouting that people make when they're angry. It's been a
when
part
they're
of
angry. Okay.
when they're angry. It's been a part of the English language since the middle of the 18th century. So
Okay. So yeah, mid 1700s. Okay. I just thought it was loud and noisy. I didn't know it had to do with anger.
well, so far you're two for two.
Well, kind of. Yeah. Okay.
Well, not even kind of. Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't what is it?
Well,
Don't,
I didn't
spend your luck-
realize that it was with anger. I knew it was loud and noisy, but I didn't realize that it was in anger. So.
And do you okay, so would you I would never use these first.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never use them. I've never used them.
My grandmother used to say kerfluffle all the time, but so if I'm affecting that Eastern Texas, Western Louisiana accent, I would use it. But in normal conversation, I don't think I've used it more than once or twice in my life.
Okay. How about cacophony?
Cacophony is the same thing, loud, noisy. I have heard descriptions of jazz music described as a cacophony of sound, just a bunch of confusing, mixed up noises that don't make any sense. Okay.
You're totally correct. Ragamuffin.
Ragamuffin. This is another. See, now you are taking a page out of the Eastern Texas, Western Louisiana vocabulary book. I mean, I don't know if you found one of my grandma's textbooks or what, but a ragamuffin is like a dirty kid, a street urchin or something like that.
That one I concur on. No, that one I also I have heard. So that one, yeah. Although I don't use it. Don't be such a ragamuffin. Look at that. I've never used it, but I do know what it is prior to this.
I have used it, but it's very rare that I'm in a position to where I need to use it, but if you're describing a movie or something, like you want to describe Oliver Twist. Oh yeah. Oliver, he fell in with a bunch of ragamuffins off the street, It's one of those descriptive things.
Okay. So this one, I know what it is. I know its definition, but I do not use. And it is, where is it? Whippersnapper.
Again, you're reading my grandmother's textbooks, man. Whippersnapper is a young, smart kid. Hey, you young whippersnappers, get off my lawn.
Yeah. Okay.
These are pretty easy, I gotta say.
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It all can't be brain.
Oh no.
Brain rocket science. Mm-hmm. Gibberish. We know what that is.
Oh, gibberish? Yeah.
Gibberish, I'm sorry.
Just nonsensical words.
Gobbledygook.
More or less the same thing. Just you don't come at me with that gobbledygook. You sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. Yeah.
Poppycock.
BS. Also, a brand of caramel covered popcorn. Carcajack's direct rival.
This one I use occasionally. Discombobulate.
I see now. I didn't realize until recently that anybody other than my own family knew what that meant. It's not something that you hear. But over like the last 15, 20 years, the number of people outside of my family I have heard use that. It's completely discombobulated. I'm like, you know that word? I thought it was something my grandfather made up on my dad's side.
Right.
It was just one of those things. I had no idea that it was a thing. I was totally confused. I was just.
So define it for us so we can move forward.
Oh, confused. Kind
messed
of.
Up.
Totally just kind of
broke
messed
down.
Up. I didn't. I've never used it in that context. Broke down. It's always been like a state of confusion.
Yeah. I've used it for, I guess, I'm trying to find something that would work with something broke down. Disassociated, a mess, I would say. Would that be fair?
Yeah, something kind of mixed up or confused.
Yeah.
But I've never used it. I wouldn't say, yeah, my car's discombobulated. That just doesn't.
Let me read it, what it says about it.
Okay. All right.
So that, so mainly used in North American English if somebody's talking a lot of, crap. Wait, am I on the wrong thing? Hold on. Yeah. Okay. If somebody's, where is it? Mainly used in North America. If somebody's talking a lot of gibberish, gobbledygook, or poppycock, they may be trying to discombobulate another person.
Yeah, confused.
You may feel a little discombobulated by all these strange words. Confused? You should be. Discombobulated means confused. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Confused, mixed up, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Flummoxed.
Okay. Flummoxed is, you're caught unaware. I don't know. Just absolutely flummoxed me. I had nothing to say. Speechless.
Let's read what it says. Means to be confused. Means to confuse them a lot. It came into the English language in the middle of the 19th century. It was taken from dialects used in some parts of the UK.
Okay. See, I've always equated flummoxed with you don't know, and that leads to your confusion.
Yeah, but it's in the range. So within a sentence, man, I'm flummoxed,
Yeah. Legal speak, if I'm reading a contract, it leaves me absolutely flummoxed because nobody knows those words.
Yeah. So, curmudgeon.
That's me. It's an old person and a crabby old person who's set in his ways. Kind of grouchy, kind of crabby. Maybe he's got a kind heart. Maybe he's got a soft side. But
it says here, are you trying to find just the right word for someone who's very bad-tempered and grumpy?
Yeah.
Curmudgeon.
Yeah. Yeah. Walter Matthau in Grumpy Old Man. He was a curmudgeon.
It dates back to the 16th century.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Wow. We're still using words from the 1500s. Holy cow. That's cool. That's actually kind of cool. Not just words, slang words.
Amazing.
That's cool. That's fun to me anyway.
This one's one that I do use frequent. I don't want to say frequent, but within the standard words that we repeat to string sentences together. This is one that I do use every now and then, and it's lackadaisical.
Yeah, that's kind of lackadaisical is kind of just, taking your time.
Yes.
Just laconic, just.
Yes. It's been used since the 17th century.
The 17th century. Wow.
Here's one, woe be gone, which I've never really, it doesn't sound foreign to me. Woe be gone sounds like a string of 3 words to me.
Whoa, be gone, Satan,
Or woe as in sorrow be gone.
Yeah.
So which one have you used it? Have you heard it?
I've heard it. I think it's kind of sort of a, cheer up kind of a thing.
That's exactly what it is. It's saying, woe, be gone. Extreme sadness, be gone.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it's from the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Wow.
Lollygag.
Man. Again, you're back into grandma's textbook. Lollygag is just kind of being lazy and kind of hanging around and just, taking your own sweet time. Just kind of malingering, just not pulling your weight,
Yeah, that one is one that is still we frequent it, at least in popular culture, on occasion. so
yeah.
that it's not a distant. It doesn't
Oh, yeah.
sound something completely strange.
No, you drive by a construction site and you got 5 guys out there, laying concrete, pouring a sidewalk, and you got that one dude leaning against a shovel who ain't making any attempt to do anything. He's lollygagging.
Well, you succeeded to pass the test.
Woohoo! So now, how do I rate in that study the Denning what's it called effect?
I don't know that you could. Well, this is not in correlation to the other thing because.
Okay. Well, no, correlation does not imply causation. So I'm just wondering the Dunning-Kruger effect. Where did I hit?
It's not. No, well, because we didn't ask you first. How good? Well, actually, you offered up.
Well, I said I like this kind of thing.
You said you like, but you don't know, right? Yeah. So I couldn't be the judge of that.
Oh, okay. All right.
No one can be the judge of that unless you go through that test. I don't know if once you know it, once you know that, everybody won't see. That's the thing. Once you've learned a lesson, and the lesson of the Dunning-Kruger effect is that you should not. If you're overemphasizing your ability to succeed on this thing, the chances are that we overestimate our ability, as proven by the test that they did. But once you know the outcome, you would reason out that I better not be so sure of myself. But I guess that's the paradigm we live in, because people that have heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect and the study and take on the assumption that maybe they should be more cautious, they're already showing a sign of reasoning. But a person that's so overconfident yet dumb would not question or even listen to this conversation to care enough. For goodness sakes, the guy covered himself in frickin'
lemon juice,
in freaking lemons. So we're stuck in this thing where you can't really, because you're aware of it, you're gonna apply it. The be careful that you might overstep and then look the fool, but you already know that lesson, so you don't fall into that other category.
Well, my grandfather told me years and years ago, we're back to the West Texas or the East Texas. Well, Grandpa was from Oklahoma, and with him, it was short and sweet. You don't learn anything the second time you're kicked by a mule.
And by the way, they also explained in the test, just to round it off, that we all are a spectrum. We all have that behavior. So it's not a case of it's just a certain group and then I'm safe. And no. We live on a spectrum of that behavior, because we do have to contend with our ego.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There is a thing with, us seeing things and judging them not as they appear for certain scenarios. We're stuck in our brain. And we have the thing about what you said in the beginning, our mood, our temperament. There's so many factors. So we all fall within a spectrum of that happening to us.
Sure.
That stubbornness or that lack of seeing it as it's true. So we all have that.
And I keep coming back to my default position. People are people.
Yeah, except that there's exceptional people out there that are exceptionally
and they excel at different things.
Yeah.
And some of them are absolute experts at not excelling at all.
All right. So let's do this, because we have a little chat afterwards. So let's do that, because we're at the hour mark.
Okay.
Couple of things to mention to you folks out there. We are recording live on YouTube, and that's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. We do this every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern Time and 6:30 Pacific. So you can come and hang out with us and check us out live. But we also have a show that comes out in the morning on Tuesdays bright and early, and that's on is it Spreaker? It's Spreaker.com. That's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Spreaker. You can catch us on our website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, which has our past episodes. You can press the Wayback Machine button, and on there you'll see our past range of different topics, our past episodes. So, and I think we're going to be making shirts soon.
Are we?
Well, I think so. Well, I had a dream about it that we would make shirts.
There's going to be Trampled merch.
I thought, why not? You know,
cool.
and put it at the most affordable prices. What's ever. You know.
Okay, well, we're low rent, so that would kind of fit in with our image. So
let's put it this way: we pay you to wear the. Just kidding.
Yeah. And Steve is out there having a fit right now. The views expressed by the hosts of this channel in no way reflect the opinions of the sponsors.
5 free websites with each purchase of a freaking shirt. No,
right.
So we also have a Facebook page, and that's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. And well, if you go over there, you can check out things that we post, links, pictures to the very things that we talk about on this podcast. And we're here each Tuesday. So we are also sponsored by.
We're sponsored by Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media, the aforementioned person having a conniption fit. Harneal Media, your one-stop website shop. If you're thinking about putting up a web store, maybe you want to create merch like these Trampled Underfoot podcast stuff that Eloy's cooking up in his brain right now. I need to mention that Eloy does all the artwork for every episode we put out. So if you follow me on Facebook and you see all these promotions that I'm putting out when the podcast gets released on Tuesday mornings, that's all Eloy. He does all of our artwork. So if he's going to come up with merch, it's going to be cool. So anyway, that is Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media, who now says he may be former sponsor of the Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com website. Check him out. He's your guy for all your website needs. That's harnealmedia.com.
That's right. And don't forget our 500%. No, just kidding. Listen, it's comedy. Take it easy. 500% discount, I was going to say.
Yeah, right.
How does that work?
It's a good thing it's my edit. I know exactly what to take out.
How does that work, though? Some crazy thing like that. Anyways, listen, guys. We enjoy hanging out. Hope you have a great week, rest of the week. We'll catch you here next time. Peace.
Clear. All right, boy. Now, I want to. Billy says, be careful. Y'all don't want to be redirected. Ask Patrick. Yeah, I remember that. So, Steve, I just want you to take note of who's doing all the talking and where all that email needs to be forwarded to. And it ain't Oregon, okay?
Chances are, Steve, that if and I'll say this publicly after the show, if people come with those suggestions that I was making in jest, which I clearly said, chances are those people are covered in lemon juice. So don't worry about it.
That freaked me out, man. Covered in lemon juice. Oh, well, I'm invisible.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's a crazy thing, dude. It's really an astonishing thing.
It's just about the time I think my faith in humanity has been restored for one reason or another. Somebody comes along and gives me a reality check to go, you know what? Maybe this survival of the fittest thing was just a theory and it wasn't real. Maybe there is no natural selection. I don't know.
No, well, but think about it though. I mean, there's some crazy stuff.
I know. That's the whole point. And that's my argument against evolution. You'd have think we'd have bred that out of us by now, but no.
So there was another video where a guy It's on YouTube.
Mhm.
And this is the equivalent of that.
Mhm.
It really is.
Mhm.
And by the way, people can appear completely normal
That's
to
the
you,
hard. That's the bad thing.
but behind the curtain,
Mhm.
there's like a little hamster. Instead of running around the wheel, he's sitting there with like one sunflower seed hanging out of his cheek.
He's
not doing
underneath. He's underneath the wheel doing this, watching it spin. Yeah.
There's one video. He's just going,
Yeah, watching the wheels spin.
They're and totally happy with it. He said, "This is how you do it.
This is
how."
cool.
There's a video, dude, where a guy somewhere in California, probably, it seemed like, or Arizona, somewhere out west.
Mhm.
It appeared to me, and judging by the streets and the way they were, he had his like truck on the curb, parked in front of his house. And one day he comes out filming. He filmed it on his phone because there's a guy jacking up his back tire and working on removing his back tire. And his truck is right behind his parked with a flat tire. And the guy that owns the truck that the other guy's vandalizing says, "Dude, what are you freaking doing?" And by the way, this guy, the owner of the good truck, had a sign that it was for sale. Mm-hmm. And the other guy's saying, "I just need a tire and I'm putting it over here." "You're stealing my tire." He says, "No, I'm not stealing it. I need it, and you have a for sale sign. You don't need this, but I need mine." And he continued to argue with the guy whilst
stealing his tire.
The guy had to come up to him and he said, "Stop filming, I'm not doing anything wrong." And so there you go. I mean, yeah. And then the film cuts out with him finally stepping away from him because this guy was threatening him already. And so the guy finally kind of sort of worked it so that he walked away from his. But how do you explain that, dude? How do you explain that, dude? How do you explain that? How?
You don't.
Exactly.
You don't explain it. Exactly.
I mean, it's like, what the hell?
I know. There are crazy people everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. I don't know anymore. I worked 15 years in the casino industry, and I saw a lot of weird stuff. I mean, I really did. People are just goofy. I mean, and superstitious. I mean, you worked in the casino industry. You know what I'm talking about. Some of the stupidest superstitions. "Oh no, I got to sit down in my chair from the left because the last time I won a jackpot, I sat down from the left." Stupid things like that. But to do something like that, to just go up and just start stealing somebody's tire. Did the guy call the cops? Did they catch him? Or you don't know because the video ended.
The video ended.
Jesus. I don't know.
But I mean, come on. It's like, well, but see, here's the weird here. Okay, here's the problem for me watching that. Number one, it's the brazen in your face. Meanwhile, you're taking another person's. What has that person been taught in their life?
Obviously, not much. Because they weren't taught any of the golden rules. I mean, you leave other people's stuff alone. If it ain't yours, don't touch it. Well, I didn't know that was yours. Well, you knew it wasn't yours. Don't touch it. That's easy. God, I don't know. But you know what? I hesitate to say that it doesn't surprise me because it does surprise me. Let's just put it at that. But they got a big push over in the UK, and this has been going on for years and years and years, especially in London, in the city. A bunch of people living in the city. People have pets, and you have to take your dog out of the apartment and go walk him, and he does his business and everything. And the big push is to get people to clean up after their dogs. And folks are, 90%, I would say, of folks have figured that out. And they carry around little plastic bags, and there's stations all over the parks where you can get these little plastic bags. You're supposed to pick it up and throw it in the garbage. What people are doing now, check out this logic here. This is kind of sort of along the same lines as the guy with the lemon juice. Is the dog will do their business. They will pick it up, put it in the plastic bag, tie the bag shut, and then put it on the ground where the dog did his business and just leave. Like, because it's in a plastic bag, that's better.
That's amazing.
And others take it a step further. They'll take it with them and tie it in a tree branch. Like the poop fairy came by, And this is a major thing that they're having a problem with over there. So it makes me think maybe, and this is where conspiracy theories start. Maybe we need to start doing that. You've seen the memes, I'm sure, about shows a picture of the valve stem on your tire. And it says, cut off this tracking device so Walmart can't trace where you're at.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to start doing that. We need to start doing more of that. We need to print more coupons for blinker fluid. Maybe we need to start setting these people so we can identify them, at a glance from a distance. Oh, you're one of those. Okay. All right.
It's crazy, dude.
It's going back to, oh my God, what's that comedian? What's his name? Bill Engvall. Maybe we do need to give those people signs.
But, especially with the criminal situation, a lot, I can't say exactly, I can't say that a grand sweeping sort of like putting them all in one box, because there's criminals that are so intelligent. But it depends on if you're someone holding up a hot dog stand, that's one thing. And then you have like the tech, criminals that are doing whatever they're doing. Morally, ethically, it's all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a high degree of technical skill plus that wickedness of you taking from others. Mm-hmm. Whereas the first guy stealing hot dogs, with a gun, a plastic squirt gun, is just completely on another level.
Oh, you see the guys on on YouTube videos all the time. Tries to hold up a gas station with a screwdriver, and it's like, what are you going to do with that? What do you think you're going to do with that? You're going to try to stab at me? I mean, come on. But
the idea of putting yourself in a situation. So I put them in different brackets because one, it's evilness occurring behind technical skills, which at the end is stupid. So anytime you do something outside of the safety thing, whatever you want to call it, you are running a risk.
Sure.
So it's worth not doing.
They're harder to catch for sure. They're harder to catch.
But putting yourself physically in a scenario where, I mean, how can you not think if you're gonna, like, let's say a bank? How can you not possibly think that not only are other people armed, there's cameras, you would have to create like one of those heist movies, such an intricate plan, and even then, with an insider, but even then,
has that ever ended well? Has it ever ended? I mean, you might get away if all the stars line up. And see, this is why I have to be honest, because I'm the world's worst at doing something like this. I would be the world's worst. If I robbed a bank with 400 other people, I would be the one caught and they would make the example out of me. So, I know my luck. I don't push it. So if all the stars lined up and you did get away with it and you managed to get out of Dodge safely away with the money, that's going to make you want to do it again. And that's when greed comes into play. and they're going to get caught. When has that ever? It's like these guys that run from the cops. You can spend hours online watching police chases. Has it ever turned out nice? Do you think you're just going to drive back to your home and go to a normal life like you had before you didn't stop? Do you really?
That's
No.
why I think. That's why I think. I hate to say it. There is a, call it whatever you want to call it, a thought process that hasn't been utilized, or maybe because the ability is not there with these people putting themselves in situations that, so in a way it's like it's people that they just, and some of them can be violent, like there's the
Yeah,
violent aspect,
sure.
and that's also a monstrosity, which is worst. But so these people, there might be, and then then there's the other spectrum where there's people that are on the psychopath level, and
Right.
so there's a whole spectrum
Sure.
there. But I don't know, I how could you sleep, close your eyes at night,
Well, some people are so detached from reality that they have no problem doing that. Now, Billy Burt just talked about D.B. Cooper. Very interesting case. And if you don't know who D.B. Cooper is, Google it. There's been some new evidence presented about D.B. Cooper, and they've narrowed it down to a few more people. Personally, I think the whole thing about jumping out of the airplane in the Pacific Northwest was a red herring. I think personally that he ended up in the Reno, Nevada area. I think that's where he ended up. I really do.
What happened
Just
with him?
my personal opinion. D.B. Cooper was the guy who hijacked the aircraft, and it was either in Portland or Seattle. I don't remember which. He demanded a certain amount of money, several $100,000, and a parachute. And he told the pilots, he said he had a bomb on board. He let all the other passengers out. It was just him and the flight crew and one flight attendant, I think, one or two. And they brought him the money so he wouldn't blow up the bomb. He let everybody else get off the aircraft and gave him a parachute. Well, the pilots say that, and then they took off, and he told them just to fly south. And I don't remember the exact destination he told them to fly to. But the pilots say that somewhere over close to the Columbia River, which is the border between Oregon and Washington, just to the north of me here, they got a light came on the instrument panel that said one of the rear doors opened, and then it went out. So they think he jumped, because when they landed at Reno, at that time it was Reno Cannon International Airport, they landed there for fuel. He wasn't aboard anymore. The parachute was gone. The money was gone. And this was way back. This was either late 60s or early 70s. No sign of him has ever been found. Now, fast forward a few years, in the 80s, some kids down on the Columbia River found some of the money that they gave D.B. Cooper. They found some of that money, a few $1,000s. But none of that money has ever turned up again. D.B. Cooper has never been found. He just disappeared. He did leave behind some evidence. And one of the things that he left behind was a necktie that he was wearing. And on that necktie, using new technology, they found some particles on the necktie, and I mean a bunch of them, that would indicate that he worked somewhere that made cathode ray tubes for televisions, radar screens, something like that. So that was new to the FBI. They didn't know it. They have officially closed the case, unless they find more evidence that might link it to a specific person.
How much money did he take?
It was a couple of $100,000, but none of it has been recovered. Personally, just my opinion, I think he bailed out close to Reno, and they didn't notice that back door open because they were in the middle of their landing cycle. He told the stewardess, the flight attendant who was with him, to go up into the cockpit and close the door and not to come out until he told them to come out. Then they saw that light over the Columbia River, and they don't remember seeing the light again but all of them say they can't be sure it never came back on, because the light came on when he opened the door, it went out, but obviously if he jumped out of the aircraft, he couldn't close the door, because that would mean that he would have to have been standing on something to be able to close that aircraft door. It can only be locked from the inside. So whether it was constantly flashing and blinking, they think that the jet wash, of course, slammed the door shut. It's a big thing. It was a big case. It was a mystery. Personally, I think he jumped out somewhere closer to Reno, made his way to Reno, and laundered the money there. It's just an opinion. I could be 100% wrong. But back at that time, you could take, if you won, say, $10,000 on the dice table, you could take that money to the cashier's cage and say, I want to put this in the safe. What they would do is they would write you a receipt for the $10,000, and they'd put the money in the just in the general till there and make change with it, and off you go. Then you came back the next day, you gave them that receipt, they would pull out $10,000 out of the vault and give it to you, and off you went. You didn't get back the same money that you handed them necessarily. Well, now by law, if you can still do that. If you win big at the crap table, you can say, I want to put this in the safe. They put it into a bag and you sign a receipt. Half of that receipt goes in the bag and it goes in the safe. So when you come back the next day and say, I want my $10,000, they give you back the same money you gave them. That wasn't the case back then. So if he hit all of the casinos in Reno, that money could have been circulated all over the place. Just the fact that they never found it again doesn't mean it wasn't there, because damaged bills get burned every day.
Yeah.
And they don't keep track of serial numbers that way. They don't, there's so many damage. I mean, they take bills of used, wasted, tore up, ragged, worn out money, and they just in bales incinerate it. They don't mark down what serial numbers have been returned. They don't look for that stuff. There's just too many of them. They can't. So I think it was laundered in the Reno, Tahoe area.
Interesting.
And it just was mixed in with the money that came out of the casinos that ended up going wherever.
You have to have some nuts, though.
Oh yeah. I didn't say they weren't. I didn't say they weren't brave.
The guy holds up a place, freaking gets on a plane, jumps out of the plane, just the whole thing, and armed, and it's just like bad decision after. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then let's say you're trying to help out your family member because they need the money, or there's some sort of like situation. You got to get that money too. It's just the whole thing is such a nightmare. It's like it's a bad back-to-back set of circumstances.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's, some people are just evil, and that's all there is to it. And that's something we don't acknowledge enough. I don't think that there are just some bad people in the world.
Yeah.
Best
thing to do is become a politician, and that way you could do it legally.
Yeah. Well, I tend to follow Dennis Miller's philosophy on this, and that is you can't save everybody. All you can do is hope you don't live next door to them when they go off. Okay, Linda just popped in and she said he got away with $200,000. FBI has suspended the investigation but has not closed the case. Okay. All right.
I mean, 1971.
Yep.
200,000. Could you make 200,000 last since 1971 till now?
Well, see, now you're getting into
inflation and whatnot.
Well, no, who's to say that he didn't have a job, didn't have another job, or have something else lined up? Who's to say that he wasn't, he didn't go somewhere else and start another line of work, and that was just the money he needed to get there? A lot of people will do stuff like that just for ego, to prove that it can be done, prove that I can do it. I bested the cops and I got away with it. I mean, he may be on YouTube right now.
Yeah.
And we just don't know that is DB Cooper.
Look, last thing I'll say, there is, and I don't, it's unfortunate. I just remember the story kind of. There's another movie that I think you would find. See, I don't know if you'd find it interesting, but it's so freaking incredible.
Mhm.
It's the movie. I forget the name of the movie, the whole thing, but maybe we'll figure it out. There was a game show back in the 60s and 70s, and I think it was the Love Connection or
Okay, yeah.
some sort of love thing. The host of that was actually a spy for the United States while he was on the show. And the movie recounts the whole, and this is like factual.
Mhm.
And it's like a famous that you could watch on, I forget if it's the Love Game or.
There was one called The Love Connection. That was Chuck Woolery. Then there was another one, The Dating Game. That was Jim Lang. And then there was the Newlywed Game. That was Bob Eubanks.
Let me, I'll do it right now. Game
Okay.
show host that was a spy.
This is weird.
Chuck Barris.
Chuck Barris was a spy?
Yep.
Chuck Barris wasn't he was a game show host. He had the Gong Show, but Chuck Barris is the one who came up with the Newlywed Game and the Dating Game. He was the creator of those. He was a goofball. Chuck Barris was a spy?
Chuck Barris, a hitman for the CIA.
No.
Although Barris admitted on the Today Show back in 1984 that no, I was never a CIA hitman. I never did those things. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind doubled down on the mythos. What game show host was a CIA agent? Chuck Barris. Barris in 1977, Philadelphia, born in Philadelphia. There's a lot in there about
I'm
that.
gonna have to look that up because I know the spy is supposed to be in every movie I've ever seen the one you least expect, but I think I speak for everybody when I say Chuck Barris. WTF.
The movie itself and the movie, let me see, game show host spy movie, let's see, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, a 2002 biographical spy film depicting the fictional life of a popular game show host.
Oh, okay.
Claimed that he was an assassin for the CIA, and so it's a 2002.
Okay, so there's a fictionalized account of it.
There's a fictionalized account.
Okay, all right. You were scaring me there. Yeah, Billy Burt says that the History Channel recently did an updated documentary on D.B. Cooper. Yes, he did. In fact, one of the shows that Linda likes to watch on, I don't know if it's on the History Channel, if it's on the Travel Channel, it's on one of those. But she's got this big thing with Josh Gates. She loves Josh Gates, and he does one called History Unexplained or something like that. Or
hey,
what's that?
It's no Greg. It was quick. He's been sitting back, but this whole. So we're sort of like touching our toe in the ice cold pond of the conspiracies in this, and Craig jumps in and says, "Well, that guy was an idiot. This is."
He was.
Well, so the movie is good. It is really good because of the whole thing. So, but the thing is, but you see how, like, the whole conspiracy thing is a touchy, because nobody wants to be fooled. That's for one.
Okay. And
that concept of like, I'm not going to be freaking you're not pulling the wool over my eyes with that is a very true thing. So
sure.
And Snow Crusher has a very quick reaction to such.
Well, Linda just double checked and she said, no, that's not true. But the show that Chuck Barris was a spy, that's evidently not true.
Yeah. There is a movie about it, though.
Okay. Yeah, her buddy Josh Gates, he's a hunk. His show is called Expedition Unknown. They were doing the investigation into the DB Cooper thing and went through the whole story and what have you. Yeah. And they are the ones who got a piece of the necktie to have it examined in an independent lab. And it was that TV show that discovered all the particles on the tie that were linked to the production and the making of cathode ray tubes for television sets or radar monitors or something like that. And they sent it back to the FBI's lab, and the FBI confirmed it. And they said, yeah, that's the first break we've had in, 30, 40 years. But yes, that's true. And it narrowed their list down of potential suspects. So
you have to see because they once the when the thing started, because I mentioned it, so mind you, I don't know if it's true, but I started I didn't know that it was true or not, but I was trying to remember the whole thing. It's because I saw the movie.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's a fact and stuff,
Mhm.
And obviously now we know. But once I went down that line,
Mhm.
people were quick to make it. But what you don't know, Greg, is that Chuck was also the same guy from Mark's story here of the guy that jumped out of the plane.
Oh, DB Cooper. It was Chuck Barris. There you go. No, actually, DB Cooper was just the antithesis of Chuck. That would be like confusing you with me. They were that different. Chuck Barris, I mean, Greg's right. He was an idiot who lived in his own world. He would do things. After he passed away, some of the people who came along and were talking about, making the Gong Show and the other shows that he was instrumental in creating, some of the stuff that he did you ever see the Gong Show?
Yeah.
He would do things on that show to get a response playing for the cameras. Like there was one act that came out and it did this little thing. It didn't get gonged and they rated him and everything else. The guy came out with a dog, and the dog was a part of the act. And I don't even remember what they did. But at the end of the act, Chuck Barris goes over and he puts his arm around the guy and he's talking to the judges on whether the guy's got talent or not and what they would rate him and all this other good stuff. And the dog keeps turning his head and going after Chuck Barris's crotch. Just keeps going after it, and he backs up and kind of pushes him away, and he keeps doing it and keeps doing it and keeps doing it. And they cut away to a commercial. Turns out what Barris did was he took some canned dog food and rubbed it on the inside of his crotch so the dog would do that. Because he knew that it would be funny. He knew it would be funny for the cameras.
That's incredible.
He would do things like that. I mean, yeah, and he drove people crazy on that show. Billy's talking about he drove the censors nuts. He drove everybody nuts. The censors were the last line of defense. But yeah, he was a goofball.
So it sounds to me, so with all this extra, no, I mean, I saw the movie back then, and I remembered, since we're talking all about all this, I remember when I watched the movie, which is brilliant, and they said based on a true, when I saw it back then, you have a game show host that does game show host things in the movie, but he's constantly between shows going out and having to assassinate or take a overnight trip to, like, let's say France, and then come back, like things like that. And it creates this theatrical tapestry. So I just conclude now that the guy was a brilliant mind. If he wrote that, if he did that, if he wrote that movie or that book, he was brilliant at creating, because that's an interesting.
Well, if you look back through history, most of our creative people were a little bit off their nut anyway. Some of them were way off their nut.
Yeah.
But most of the creative people were a little bit warped, bent, or twisted. Not all of them by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
But we've talked about it before, and man, it's 8:15. We've almost gone.
Yeah, we went over.
Anyway.
But yeah.
There was an era between the late, I would say about 1880s and the about 1912, 13, 14, Well, no, a little bit later than that because it was going on still during World War One. But the era was known by sociologists as the Great Binge, where it seemed like everybody was on drugs because there were no laws about anything.
Yeah.
But that was also the era where we had the most technological advancements. We had a big explosion in art and literature. I mean, the Impressionist painters and the poets just were absolutely barking mad on absinthe and laudanum in Paris, just going nuts with this stuff. But we had this explosion of art and poetry and literature and books and plays and all this other kind of stuff. And things mellowed out after, they got off the drugs and what have you. But still, I mean, even people like Andy Warhol, people who knew him well would tell you, oh, yeah, the guy was just an absolute nut. He was crazy. Little things like he would only wear green underwear. He wouldn't wear any other color. And he had no reason. He just, no, that was it. Underwear is supposed to be green.
It's a benign thing,
but that's just one example. There was a bunch of stuff.
It's benign, but it sort of opens the door to like why, and the why is where the craziness comes in because
But a normal mind doesn't think of stuff like that. When we think about the advancements in music and what have you, yeah, during the 60s there was a lot of experimentation with drugs and what have you, but you don't come up with something like Dark Side of the Moon after a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of something going on there. And, maybe, just maybe that's why we haven't had any explosions such as that lately.
There's no hive, and it's impossible now. I mean, we've talked about that. We could expand on that big time, but let's not do that.
Now, let's not do that. But, we're done with the audio side of this. It's my edit, so, we'll get rid of this. This is just our time that we sit and BS with the guys in the chat and the guys and gals in the chat.
You want
to watch me get slapped for saying that. But I have to say, yesterday was a major anniversary. And this was the thing that I had set aside, but it won't matter next week.
Okay.
Yesterday was the 48th anniversary of the release of Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, wow.
That album came out 48 years ago yesterday. So that's what I had set aside.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
See, Billy Burt is just drawing us back in by putting that's something we haven't touched on.
And he's right. Who comes up with the idea for Yellow Submarine? Where did that come from?
Actually, according to what I remember, this is just from memory. Paul McCartney wrote it more to do with, at least this is what I remember, more to do with like a children's story as opposed to anything necessarily psychedelic. It was a straight up, just a children's little sing-along. But one thing that's funny about sing-alongs and children's stories, as we know with Dr. Seuss and so on, they can be extremely psychedelic. A simple children's story. Look at Winnie the Pooh. People might think, or Alice in Wonderland. They can be, well, Alice in Wonderland's another story. But children's stuff can be completely insanely trippy.
Yeah, because there is no reality. A Cat in a Hat or Green Eggs and Ham. I mean, come on. So
yeah, who would eat that? And what the heck is that cat doing in my hat anyhow?
Could you in a car? Could you from afar? Hey, well, what can you say?
Well, listen, guys, we're out of here. And so is Mr. Potato Head. We're all out of here. You guys have a great rest of your week. And is there anything else you wanted to?
No, that was about it. I just wanted to throw that in as a final little tidbit because it won't be relevant next week. But that's okay.
And remember, vampire, what was it? Spectacular. I even forgot. When you bull crap, you can't remember what you started with. I was about to do the vampire joke thing for Greg, but you go so far that you can't.
Vampire Deluxe number 9.
But you see,
Vampire Deluxe number 9.
There it is
in Technicolor. Widescreen edition. Director's cut.
I would actually, if it did exist, I would give it a chance. Yeah. All right. We got to get out of here.
All right. Have a good night, y'all. Take care.